Hi everyone, I'm Gina Minardi and I'm a licensed therapist who got fed up with therapy. This is a one-woman show about my journey of finding the spaces between non-traditional approaches of healing. What I learned is that there's no one right way to heal, and you truly are your best resource. Therapists and healers are meant to support you on your path, but they don't have all of the answers. You do. This show is about the spaces between laughter, tears, thoughts, ego, soul, messy growth, and moments of joy. It's about personal liberation, inner knowing, and the tools that get you there. I will cover topics that make many of us uncomfortable and interviewing people who are willing to go there. I've spent thousands of hours listening to human beings navigate their life story, from rehabs in Malibu to homeless shelters in East LA, and now my private practice. It has been some of the most profound, painful, and beautiful moments in my life. Thank you so much for joining me. Hello, friends, and Happy New Year to you. I hope that your year has started off magically and with joy. But I'm sure, as many of my clients have brought to the table, and even for myself, 2022 has started off with quite the bang. Like the bang of a migraine that never quite goes away. Or that could also be, if you hear it in my voice, I have been fighting a flu, not tested positive for COVID, but yet everyone around me has COVID right now. About 50% of my friends and clients in Los Angeles. So something I've noticed in my sessions over the last few days that I've gotten from everyone is this real sense of heaviness and darkness of, when is this pandemic ever going to be over, Gina? I'm so exhausted from talking about COVID, wearing a mask, being nervous that I'm going to infect someone in my family, to other questions of, do you think that we're going into a civil war this year? The news headlines keep highlighting this. It feels apocalyptic these days. Don't you agree? Tensions are high and people seem extra on edge. Global warming, increased isolation with COVID, deeper dependency and addiction to technology. I'm a real bummer in the beginning of this, but I'm sure you've all been feeling this, because I've just been getting this kind of echoed sentiment from everyone, clients, friends, family, which brings me to the topic of today. What is your relationship to pain and to suffering? They're two different things. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently, especially being sick for these last 12 days. I had a little PTSD of the 6 weeks before when I was really sick with COVID in 2020, and just dealing with all the emotions that came up with that, and fear of my body being taken over again and potentially being bedridden for weeks on end. So interestingly enough, I've been thinking that none of us are getting out of life without experiencing some level of pain and suffering. And in our current world, it seems like our mental anguish is at an exacerbated level. So last night, my partner Jonas and I decided that we really needed to join a talk at Spirit Rock up in San Francisco, which is a Buddhist Sangha, because Jonas and I for years went to a Buddhist Sangha in Santa Monica, which was really a refuge for us from kind of the insanity of the world, and getting together with like-minded people who want to talk about things like self-compassion, compassion out to the rest of the world, impermanence, facing our death, which inevitably brings us into a deeper level of presence and more joy and more gratitude in life. So Jonas said to me yesterday, "These are dark days, huh? I feel a real heaviness living inside of me right now, and I can't tell if it's mine or it's just the general collective energy." I believe that it's both. We are individual humans navigating an earthly experience with 7.87 billion humans collectively on an energetic level. I don't say that to be overwhelming or intense, but to actually validate that we aren't just navigating our own personal feelings, thoughts, and energy. We are deeply interconnected as a web of humans and an energy system. So again, going back to, it seemed like the perfect time for Jonas and I to dive into a talk and have somebody give us a little bit of teaching and a little bit of guidance. So Vinny Ferraro was the teacher last night, and he is one of my absolute favorites. He's from the East Coast. He's Italian. He was a former drug addict who now works with youth in the prison system, and he operates from such a space of deep wisdom and open-heartedness. He often leaves me in tears, which, interestingly enough, when he welcomed everyone to sit down, take a moment to check in, to pause, to breathe, and really feel into the sensations of our body, I noticed that I had tears streaming down my face. It honestly shocked me. It reminded me that the Sangha had been my refuge for years from this really intense world that we live in. But later I realized I was crying because I was grieving the past, this past of not being able to walk into a large room with 100 people in a Sangha, hug them freely, look at their faces without masks, not being worried if someone breathed on me too closely or if I was breathing on someone too closely, and experiencing the beauty of collective energy gathering and all of that love. To be more kind, honestly, and more skillful in daily life, and to live more freely with an open heart and love, which seems to be the polar opposite these days. So, as Vinny dropped us into our bodies and into our breath and into the present moment, I really just started jotting down notes because there were so many profound things that he said, and I just want to share them with you. So, as I read these, check in with yourself. What are the temperature of your thoughts right now? Are they hot, fearful, or anxious? Notice the quality and catch and release them. Are your feet on the ground right now? Are you okay right now in this moment? What is your direct experience, your felt sense? Liberate yourself from the stories about yourself, other people, and the world. Are you relating to your body or the story? Do you have an insatiable need to make things easier or more comfortable? It actually can make them harder. Anchor in the present moment. Everything else is a story. We need to practice paying attention to one thing at a time. Look at your attachments and your clinging compassionately. Are you muscling up towards things or are you softening? How do we respond? It is what determines our experience. Whatever is the way is the way. Most of us practice meditating and mindfulness because it's about returning to the self, returning and creating a friendly home coming back to you. The only thing harder in his life, he talked about, were his thoughts about life. What beliefs do you have right now, and are you taking them personally? What do you need to let go to be free? Create a right mind and relationship with your mind. Meet ourselves where we're at. When love is present, anything is possible. Try to not leave or abandon yourself when you're in pain. What are we breathing into life, into each moment? Sense the energy behind your thoughts. Learning how to be compassionate versus having an aversion towards your suffering. What do you want to steep your heart in? What are you in the habit of, holding on to a story or letting go? Our secondary reaction to pain is suffering. We often make things harder than they need to be. Suffering is the path to liberation. being at odds with yourself and our experience, refusing reality and going to war with it. What removes you from presence? Presence is the only place to be free, the only place love can exist. Turning towards our experience. Unless I love something, it will not reveal itself. Just love what is and broaden your awareness. Sometimes the suffering will present itself and say, you will always feel this way. But check in and care for the sensations of the body without getting lost in the labyrinth of the mind. Check in with your heart when the mind is not offering up anything helpful. If it's mental, can you drop the story? If it's physical, can you soften? Don't underestimate compassionately witnessing what's going on inside of you. Our practice with suffering can actually be a compassionate love affair. When he ended the talk with this idea that we can have a love affair with our suffering, I was speechless. I was like, what? A love affair with our suffering? But it's so true. Our suffering just needs to be witnessed and tended to and felt to be released. In these current times of 2022, I see so many of us living in a future projection of where the world will be. With COVID, with global warming, with rising tensions of the far right and the far left. So I offer this and ask you this compassionately. Are you okay right now in this present moment? What stories or thoughts may you be overly attached to right now? If you are not okay right now, can you bring a loving witness to your suffering, whether it's physical or emotional? Sometimes we just need to put a hand over our heart and say to ourselves simply, this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself, and may I give myself what I need. So, to close up in the words of the late Ram Dass, one of my favorite spiritual teachers, he talks about when he suffered from a stroke. And he says, these days, I see myself as a soul who has taken an incarnation in a body, and this body has recently suffered a stroke. So while my thought is the ego, and I was a person with a stroke, that suffering pushed me into my soul, which witnesses and watches the incarnation. It's much less painful to watch the stroke than to have the stroke. I have pains throughout my body. I list them for my doctors, but I don't identify with them. I identify being a witness of the pain. Physical pain is in the body, and I am not the body. Pain is part of the body. Now, if we're talking psychological pain, that is from the ego, which is also out there. I remember that I am my consciousness. I am my awareness. I am inside and I live with the pain, not as the pain, but with the pain. There is another way the stroke provided beneficial to me. It pushed me into my soul and further into my awakening. Instead of leaving me wallowing in the physical pains of my incarnation, it gave me a leg up and it took me into my soulness. From a spiritual point of view, suffering is sometimes the sandpaper that awakens people. So, really wrapping this up, I want to send you all love in this beginning of 2022. Because I believe that this year will be another year where we are continuously asked to compassionately tend to our fertile ground of pain, confusion of the world, and suffering to help awaken to our deepest individual healing for greater collective healing. And on a very last note, I'd just like you to check in with yourself about the stories that we're so attached to and what the news is always telling us and infiltrating. And then what's the energy that we're putting back out into the world? Are we putting out energy of fear, polarization, anger? It's the end of times. This is the apocalypse, or are we switching gears? And do we bring a level of light or a level of love or a level of optimism. And now I'm not trying to say to all of you to live in this naive utopian bubble. That's not the world. But we are energetic beings and we are collectively interwoven together. So really thinking about, what do you bring each day? What do you bring for yourself? What are the stories that you're living in? What are the stories you're saying to other people? We all deeply, deeply impact one another. And I think we continue to get this lesson. So anyways, sending lots of love and light, and just take some moments each day. Deep breaths, a pause, a moment to sit in silence, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so, so, so much for tuning in always. Hi, friends. If you have been enjoying Spaces Between, please take a moment to subscribe, and leaving a review is the cherry on top. Thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you next week.